I have kept this record for 31 years. I intend to keep it 31 more, or until my hands fail, whichever arrives first. What I will not do, what I will no longer permit, is allow a comfortable lie to sit in the same vault as the truth, and be mistaken for it. The official correction has been filed. The Council has affixed its seal. HFY's revised account of the human designation has been removed from the primary registry and reclassified as a historical document of institutional failure, to be studied, not trusted. I was the one who filed the correction. I was the one who sat before the Council and said, plainly, that I had been there, and that HF had not. This is the account I gave them. I am preserving it here, in my own hand, in the supplemental record, because the primary registry will eventually hold only the dry administrative language of the correction, and dry administrative language has a way of making things sound less consequential than they were. Let me tell you how consequential they were. I came to the Cathedral of Records at Vethanor 40 years ago as a junior archivist, assigned to the human designation files by a senior keeper who described the posting as tedious. She was not wrong. In the early years, the designation had been in place for 2 centuries by then. The files were dense with redundant reporting, another species probing the border, another species receiving the standard advisory, another species formally acknowledging the advisory and withdrawing. Routine. The warning worked. The machinery of avoidance was so well established that it had begun to seem, to a young archivist, like ordinary procedure rather than the thing it actually was. The thing it actually was. A border that held because every species that had ever seriously tested it had not come back to confirm what they found. I did not appreciate that distinction until the Orath Keln incident. By then, HFY had been my colleague for 9 years, a capable historian, a precise writer, and a scholar who had built a modest reputation on a series of papers questioning what he called the mythologization of the human designation. He was not reckless about it. He was careful and academic. He cited the absence of direct observational records. He noted that most of the designation's founding documents were transmission second-hand, survivor account, and committee inference. He argued that 2 centuries of institutional repetition had transformed a reasonable precautionary designation into something closer to religion, that the cathedral was maintaining a legend rather than a record. He was not entirely wrong, which is the most dangerous kind of wrong. The problem was not his scholarship. Scholars may question anything. The problem was that the Orath Keln propagation was listening. They were a young species by the standard of the registry, 3 centuries of interstellar capacity, aggressive in their territorial expansion, not given to accepting advisories from institutions they had not chosen to affiliate with. They had sent 2 formal inquiries to the cathedral, asking for the evidentiary basis of the human designation. Standard procedure. I had drafted the standard response twice, but Heth's papers had circulated. Heth's conclusion, that the original warning data was methodologically inadequate and likely inflated by species-specific panic responses in the initial reporting bodies, had been translated into 17 languages and distributed, as these things are, by the faction within the Orath Keln propagation that had wanted to move into that sector for decades and needed academic cover to do it. They sent their fleet, 47 vessels, a combined military and survey force, which is what you send when you are confident enough to want to map what you're taking before you finish taking it. I know the exact number because I was in the monitoring room at the cathedral's border relay when the fleet's departure was confirmed. I know the exact number because I spent the next 11 weeks watching the return log queue for those 47 vessel identifiers. I watched it every morning. I watched it on days when I was supposed to be cataloging the VethCorps remediation files from the previous decade. I watched it because I had read the founding documents that Heth found methodologically inadequate, and I had not found them inadequate. I had found them terrified. There is a difference. The return log queue for those 47 vessels never populated. Not partially, not in trickle, not with a handful of survivors carrying confused transmissions. The queue stayed empty for 11 weeks, and then the monitoring system automatically archived the identifiers as inactive. The designation protocol provides for this. When a fleet enters the human zone, and the return window closes without a single log entry, the protocol is clear. Reclassify the incursion as concluded, append the outcome to the founding document, and do not send a search party. The protocol has been invoked 19 times in 2 centuries. It has never produced a different result. One probe came back. I should mention the probe. It was an automated relay unit, not a crewed vessel, that the Orath-Keln fleet had apparently deployed at the border before crossing, presumably as a communication anchor. It returned to the relay point 33 days after the fleet crossed. It was intact. Its memory banks contained 61 hours of telemetry from the other 46 vessels, standard navigation data, engine readings, crew status logs, normal traffic up to and including the first hour after the fleet crossed the designated border. Then 61 hours of nothing. No damage reports, no distress signals, no enemy contact logs, no final transmissions. The vessel's telemetry simply stopped contributing to the relay, one by one, over the course of approximately 40 minutes, as though they had each in turn moved out of range of the probe and not come back into it. The probe had waited at the border for 33 days in case they returned. Then its programming sent it home. The council convened 4 weeks later. I was called as a witness. I gave my account of the monitoring period, the weeks at the relay queue, the empty return logs, the probe's data. I described the founding documents. I described what it felt like to read them, knowing that the species who wrote them were now extinct, and that they had written those documents in the last coherent hours before that became true. I am not a dramatic person. I gave the council facts. I gave them the exact dates, the exact vessel count, the exact monitoring protocol, and the exact condition of the probe's memory banks. Then the council asked me about Heth's revised account. I told them that Heth was a careful scholar who had made a catastrophic interpretive error, which is that he had treated the absence of clean observational records as evidence of exaggeration, rather than as evidence of what the human zone does to observation. The founding documents are fragmentary and survivor-written, and not methodologically pristine, because the witnesses who could have made them cleaner did not survive to do so. That is not a flaw in the record. That is the record. The shape of the gap is the data. Heth sat at the edge of the council chamber through my testimony. He did not speak. He did not argue. I had known him for 9 years, and I had never seen him look as he looked in that chamber. I have no interest in cataloging his expression for the record. What I will say is that he filed no formal rebuttal, submitted no addendum, and made no request for a review period. He signed the reclassification order with the rest of the council, and walked out of the chamber, and, as far as I know, has not published on the human designation since. The council reaffirmed the designation that afternoon. Sector Orath-Keln was formally closed, added to the 17 other sectors that bear the same notation in the margin of the primary registry. Incursion concluded. Return window elapsed. Designation standing. The human zone's border was not redrawn. It did not need to be redrawn. It has always been exactly where it is. The Orath-Keln propagation entered a period of formal mourning for their fleet that lasted, I understand, 2 years. They have sent no further inquiries to the cathedral. They will not. I sealed Heth's revised account into the supplemental archive. Not destroyed, as I said, because the cathedral does not destroy records. We preserve them. It sits now in the category we maintain for documents that are historically significant, precisely because they were wrong. Advisories that were dismissed, warnings that were softened, designation reviews that were convened by committees who had decided their conclusion before examining their evidence. We have many such documents. The registry is long, and the galaxy is old, and every few decades, some body of scholars, or some expanding species, looks at the human designation and decides that 2 centuries of corroborating outcome data represents insufficient proof. They are always, in the end, provided with more proof. We file it and move on. I have kept this record for 31 years. The probe is in the physical evidence vault, 3 levels below where I am sitting as I write this. The empty return logs are in the primary registry under the Orath-Keln heading, archived automatically, stamped with the protocol designation, added to the 19. They are 20 now. I will keep this record until my hands fail. And when my successor sits in this chair and a new inquiry arrives, as it will, because they always do, I will have made certain the account they read first is not Heth's. It is this one.